Hello everyone. Razorblade Mingo here. And today I just wanted to sit down and have a quick chat about the terrible news that has come out of PlayStation this week that they will be the latest large publisher that is doing a round of layoffs. The number that they have floated out there is that approximately 900 employees are going to be laid off as a result of this scaling back of operations. And the big studios that have been affected by these layoffs are teams like Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Guerrilla Games, Fire Sprite, which is going to be scaled back, and the full closure of London Studio, who of course are the team behind games like The Getaway, Blood and Truth, and among other things. And I honestly figured that I might be done talking about this subject because I felt like everything I wanted to say about how modern PlayStation is ran, I said back in the very first video of this year about PlayStation's obviously faulty live service initiative. But there are a few things I want to say in regards to specifically these layoffs that have happened and the closing of London Studio. And the first thing that I want to say is that my heart goes out to the approximately 900 employees that were laid off. It's horrible. I can't imagine waking up one morning to realize that your job security has basically been cut and you are now seen as unnecessary in the eyes of these large corporations. That must be a demoralizing, horrible feeling. And seriously, my heart goes out to everybody that's been impacted. I hope they find jobs soon. It's terrible. That's really, the long and short of it is that it's a terrible situation to be in. The other thing that I want to say in regards to this is that I was talking about this yesterday at the time of recording this, I was talking about this yesterday with somebody where I was trying to explain the current situation that's going on at PlayStation to somebody that's not familiar with video games. And we were talking about it in the context of how the decisions of a few people impact a wider group of people at a company. Because one of the areas that I find very fascinating in my degree of choice, as far as college is concerned, is psychology. And one of the areas that I find the most interesting about it is industrial organizational psychology, which has to do with the ins and outs of running a company, dealing with things like low morale, burnout, turnover, that kind of stuff. And I was explaining it to this person that it's amazing how the decisions at the heads of PlayStation have led to this point to where this is an issue, and this is an issue that I saw coming a number of years ago, where because... And I am going to name names. I am going to say Jim Ryan, Herman Holtz, all the big people that are making big decisions at PlayStation right now. It's amazing to me that they made the decision a long time ago to prioritize big AAA video games and live services and to forego a lot of the smaller, more niche games that used to define what PlayStation was all about. I'm talking about games like Journey, talking about games like Shadow of the Colossus, like Tokyo Jungle, Puppeteer, that kind of stuff. Modern PlayStation, for some reason, and I don't buy this excuse that it was a purely financial reason, because for a long time they had no problem making these massive games that would offset the costs of trying something more experimental and maybe some of them not working out as well as I think maybe personally should have. But I think their approach to just focusing on games that are just these massive budgets and live services, because of that decision, now we have reached a point where PlayStation is spending way too much on these video games. They're taking way too long to come out. And this live service initiative now has seen 2 more victims to the hit list. That is in the form of, the Sony London game that will never come out now, and the cancellation of the rumored Twisted Metal game, which sucks because I thought, and you'll hear it in the last video that I did about Helldivers 2, is that I thought of the live services that they announced, I thought Twisted Metal, along with The Last of Us Factions 2, would be one of the ones that maybe would have the best chance of success. And I guess PlayStation disagreed, or Firesprite wasn't hitting the right milestones, but it's just dead. It just sucks because now that this Sony London game is dead, along with the Twisted Metal game, and along with probably a few others, I would assume some of these live services have probably been canned that we didn't know about. Now we have less games to look forward to. And that's also a matter of the opportunity cost and the waste of time and the waste of money and the waste of resources. And again, my position is, what could they have spent this time and money on doing? Oh, let's work on some smaller scaled down games. But no, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to bet all or nothing. They wanted to buy Bungie for nearly $4 billion and wave them over their live service initiative like some kind of fucking magic wand. To be like, oh, look, bibbity boppity boo, make our live services not dog shit. There you go. And then that wand turned out to be a big turd in the form of Bungie, because they have their own fucking problems. And they're shitty when it comes to, the higher ups over there. So this is a costly lesson that PlayStation is learning right now because of the decisions of people at the top a number of years ago that wanted to go all in on these blockbuster games, these bloated ass blockbuster games that can't take many risks because they all have to be so goddamn calculated because they cost so much, and they need to all have this prestige to them in order to feel like cinematic experiences. And I'm not knocking a lot of the games that have come out from this initiative. I think games like both the new God of Wars have been very good. Obviously, The Last of Us, I think, is great. I think Ghost of Tsushima, fantastic. So it's not like they've been producing garbage from this initiative to focus on big AAA games. It's just, in my opinion, and I said this before, the formula has kind of gotten stale at this point. And I now start to notice certain PlayStation isms that appear in certain games. I feel like there were quite a few in Spider-Man 2, for instance. I saw them in God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West. And that sucks because I'm one of these old school PlayStation fans that at this point I would gladly, sacrifice certain big AAA games just so we can get some smaller ones that have personality again, which would be nice. Which I think that's part of the reason why some of my favorite games during this PS5 generation have been the smaller ones, such as Astro's Playroom, which I think is a fucking masterpiece. I think a game even like Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales I thought was really good, and that's because it's of a smaller scale. And I'm not saying a game with a smaller scale is automatically going to be great. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying, though, is that I feel like PlayStation really are missing the point of these smaller to mid-budget games. Because, like I said in the video I did at the beginning of the year, they take less time to make, less people need to work on them, you can focus more on art direction over raw graphical detail, so it costs less. And then you'll also get a shot in the arm as far as personality goes because you can be a little weird, you can be a little experimental, and even if it doesn't do well, you could probably offset that loss with one of the big, massive Marvel games coming out. I don't know, upset the cost for Spider-Man 2 revenue or anything like that, but it's not what they've been doing. Like I said, the only two games that they seem to be focusing now on are live services and big AAA games. And both of them have big fucking problems right now. Both of them are flawed in their own ways as far as, getting them to work and hit, especially the live service thing. And what really opened my eyes to how problematic PlayStation's approach to this whole thing really has been is that that Insomniac leak did not do them any favors, especially when you can see the margins and the cost of how much certain games, they had to spend in order to make. And the big one that really just made my eye twitch, I was like, what? When I saw it, was it cost Sony about $300 million to make Marvel Spider-Man 2, which I couldn't believe that when I saw that number. I was like, whoa. And Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a damn good looking game, but I agree with the executive in that leaked document that said, we spent $300 million on this thing. Where is the player going to see that we spent $300 million on this? And I completely agree that I don't see it. I don't see where the $300 million went for Marvel Spider-Man 2. And that's just one game in their portfolio. And granted, it's the one that's obviously going to make them the most amount of money and sell the most copies because it's fucking Spider-Man. But are they spending $300 million on Wolverine? Are they going to spend $300 million on Marvel Spider-Man 3 or something even greater than that? Like 400, 500 million? That shit isn't sustainable. And this is why we're seeing these problems where now that after the recent financial report of being disappointing, it's like, shit, like, we're not doing so hot. And Mr. Hiroki Totoki was actually very open about it in, the very corporate way to the shareholders. But it was pretty blunt what he said. And he straight up said, like, look, we need to do better as far as understanding how this business goes. And that means things like not spending so goddamn much on these games and not fucking making it so we're like placing all these bets on all these different live services. Because at some point, didn't they have like 12 of, they had like 10 to 12 of these greenlit where they're like, oh yeah, Jim Ryan basically went, oh yeah, 10 to 12 by fiscal year 2026 or 2025 or something like that. And back then, even then, I thought that was insane. I was like, dude, you can't get away with this. Like, this is way too much. And you're doing this, and you're a newbie to this whole new modern live service gold rush, and you want to put fucking 12 of these out? Are you out of your fucking mind? And sure enough, here we go. This is the result. It results in a bunch of canceled games and people being let go and lives being upended and a frustrated player base that already, Helldivers 2 is the rare PlayStation W these days, but during a time where I'm pretty used to PlayStation just sucking right now as a result of a lot of stupid decisions they've been making over the last few years, this is one of the biggest blows right now. Just seeing this. Just seeing 900 people be let go. Seeing multiple games being canceled. Seeing Sony London, which was one of their oldest studios at this point, close in its entirety. When I thought their London, the Fantasy London project was maybe one of the things that would actually be kind of interesting from in their live service initiative. But no, that's not the case. And I feel like this could have been avoided, honestly. If they just hadn't ballooned so damn much during COVID, if they hadn't focused so much on these high-tech, expensive single-player games, if they had gone back to doing more things like Journey and Puppeteer and Shadow of the Colossus alongside the big games, be a little bit more reasonable with the amount of money you're spending on these games. Maybe don't have a whole, like God of War Ragnarok, maybe don't have a whole hour-long level where you're fucking around on a yak, picking fruit, and collecting paint, because that's fucking boring. I would be very curious to learn how much a level like that costs, because I feel like it was just a giant waste of money. And they're paying more money to make their games worse because they're so bloated and the pacing gets all fucked up on these games now. And it didn't have to be this way. It really didn't. It could have just been healthier if they were to just not, and that's the thing too that's so frustrating, is that now with Sony Japan, Pixel Opus, and Sony London dead, now they have pretty much killed all of the studios that could have given them those smaller, more niche games that were weird, that were more experimental. I'm very disappointed in PlayStation right now. And it's just one more thing. It's just one more thing that joins the list of a bunch of other things that have just been greatly annoying and frustrating me with PlayStation over this whole generation. Expect another dry-ass year, guys. Expect another shitty-ass showcase. Because, yeah, we're in for a pretty dry, rough time from PlayStation the next year or so. Appreciate Helldivers 2 while you still can, guys, because that might be the last great PlayStation exclusive we get for a long fucking time.